Thanks for having me along here. I haven't been here for a couple of months, so it's good to finally get back here. When I got the email last week from the meetup saying what I was talking about today, I kind of gulped a little bit because it's a pretty massive topic, and I've got a presentation for you, and I'm happy for it to get sidetracked, and I'm happy for it to sort of morph a little bit as well. And despite what was said earlier, if you have questions as I'm going along, it's much better to do it in context because we've got a whole range of different experience here. So it's going to be, if I'm going too fast or if it's too technical or do you want me to speed up, just let me know and I'll help you out. So I guess the first question here is, who's actually used Joomla here before? So everyone put their hand up. Has anyone not used? No, keep your hand up. Everyone have you used Joomla? Stick your hand up.
Used or not used?
Just used it, yeah. So a couple of people haven't. Who has edited a Joomla template before? So that's a good majority. And who's actually built one before? So just a couple. Oh. Yeah, attempted to maybe. All right, so that's good. So what I'm going to be covering today is, trying to cover in the next hour and a bit is basically how to build a blank template or a skeleton template, and to give you an idea of what's basically involved in doing it. So when you actually look at the folder structure of Joomla, you don't kind of freak out so much, and give you a few tools to investigate a bit further. So it's a little overview. And basically to get started, and this is going to cover some stuff that we've covered before, is basically like, how do you start to develop it? What tools do you use to actually develop the template and to Joomla with? So I develop primarily on my local server, and then I upload to a live server. There's quite a bit of comment and some good blog posts out there about trying to give you an idea about what's actually more useful, because sometimes actually moving a site once it's been developed on a local server to a live server is kind of complex sometimes. So often it's better to actually build on your server, and then you can just kind of turn it online, and you don't have to worry about moving it. I tend to develop locally just because I like to be able to work on my hard drive and drop files in, and it's a lot quicker than working with the live server. So you've got a couple of different options, and I'm sure some of you have used WAMP or MAMP or XAMPP. Has everyone used those tools before? Great. So they're basically little apps that sit on your hard drive and replicate the environment required to run Joomla. The next, and this is actually one of the biggest parts of the toolkit, is really just your CSS editor. There's one app that's open all the time for me, and that's CSS Edit. Most of what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be pretty Mac-centric, so apologies to anyone that isn't using a Mac. I'm sure that there are lots of you here that are doing that. So CSS Edit is actually this really great program that allows you to do editing on it. I've got to get used to this. Hang on a sec. There we go. It's basically a standard code editor. What I really love about CSS Edit is the live view, and you can basically preview your changes as you type. So that's actually not going to work in this instance. I'll show you a bit later. We'll be using it extensively. But one thing that gets in the way of, I think, for when you're starting to edit a Joomla template is actually just kind of making your changes and then refreshing the page, and then making your changes and refreshing the page. And editing live on the page is just like, it's mind-blowing in terms of how easy it is to actually see what's affecting the page and how to go about it. I know you can use Firefox to do that as well. So just in Firebug, you can edit live in the actual browser. For some reason, I've never taken to the interface for that, so I've never kind of learnt the dark arts of it. So who uses Firebug here to edit and, yeah, right.
I've got it installed, but that's something to write down. Somebody who knows how to use it could run a little tune in how to get the best use out of Firebug, because I faff around in it, but it doesn't come easily. Most things I can just do intuitively, and that's one that I haven't been able to pick up quickly. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. I find it's not visual enough. I really like being able to get into CSS Edit and turn the X-ray on and basically kind of look at, okay, so that's the logo inner div. I've got the tagline. I can see that there's a margin there on the list, on the link.
What version is that in?
It's just older. It's actually stopped developing it now. They've put all their energy into something called Espresso, which is more like an IDE, which has this inside of it, but it's not really what I need when I develop. Yeah, it's $40 or something like that. And then you can move down the pathway as well. So, okay, so that's the list. We can have a look at the menu. There's nothing there. Module table, we can see there's a little margin there. And basically move back through the DOM that way. And this is crucial when we're doing support on the forum, to just quickly kind of boot this up and say, okay, there's a margin there, let's remove the margin, and the issue is solved. So I really like it because it's such a visual tool, and when you start using code editors, if you're used to using Dreamweaver or those other kind of I can't remember, what do they call when you start using a code editor, sometimes you start to really kind of miss doing stuff visually like that. So you still, CSS Edit also has a bit trigger happy. You can also have this as well. So basically, and I think when I was here a couple of months ago, Russell was showing us X-ray or Stylizer or something that has a similar thing. So that's another option for PCs. So that's got a live preview as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's two-way. You can not only zero in on an element on the screen and get control of that.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can zero in on a style somewhere on the screen and it'll show you every element that uses that style.
Yeah. So is it like this? You get the inspector up, and we can see that when I click on that, there are about 6 or 5 style sheets that have a. Is that what it does? Yeah. So it basically means all the CSS files that are included on that page. These are the files that have a relationship to the list elements for the menu. So then you can just basically, they're not all going to be relevant because they're going to be grouped, but we can extract that. Let's get this back. And get that out of there. And it will take us to the tab. So, oh, that's right, because we're up there. So then if we wanted to change that, we could remove the padding, or add a massive padding, or change the color perhaps. It's getting overridden somewhere else. Well, the color's set by the link actually. So anyway, that's basically my prime tool that I use for CSS editing. Some of the other apps that I use that I'll talk about in a second also have CSS facilities as well, but I always come back to this. I think it's, once you kind of figure out what works for you, it's good to experiment. It's good to kind of have a look around and see what different tools have to offer. But if you find something that works and is good for your workflow, then just stick with it. All right. So as I said, Firebug and Chrome and Safari also have an inspector, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, where you can have a look at the actual elements on the page and see what the CSS rules. So that's the CSS, and so then I separate into a code editor. So I use, at the moment I'm kind of shifting between a whole different set of tools. I'm using TextMate and Coda and a new free app called Sublime, which I think also has a PC version as well, which is it's a good tool. It's a bit tricky, and a lot of it uses the command interface to do stuff. So it's not the easiest tool to use, but it's getting a lot of support out there with web developers. Phrase, I think there's a PC version of that. It might be that's a free one, and Espresso, which I mentioned before. And of course, you need a Joomla installation. So you can't build a Joomla template without a Joomla installation. Well, you probably could. You wouldn't be able to see what it's doing. All right. One of the big things that I've learned over the last 5 years developing templates is that the Joomla sampler data is it's getting better, and it's improved a lot from Joomla 1.0, but it's still not an ideal base to start developing any sort of site from, in my opinion. There's always stuff that you're going to remove or that you need to add, or you find that you're still adding stuff all the time. So each time you install Joomla, you also install JCE or Akiba or admin tools. And I know that some of you here already have your skeleton base package. Who does that? I know Norm does. So what do you guys what's in your base package?
JCE, Akiba backup and admin tools. Those are the primary.
Yep.
Three.
I find Nicholas updates them so frequently that it's sort of kind of not worth having the package. But now in 2.5 at least you can just hit update. But
That's right.
Yeah, right.
after you've got about 5, versions behind, you think, oh well, I may as well make myself a new package now. I guess I'm probably my volumes probably aren't as much as other people's, so it's more work for me perhaps.
Even if you're building a site a month or a site every couple of months, it's just nice to be able to install your skeleton package and then just go from there. I also mean disabling modules like not the polls module, you don't have that anymore, but the login form if you're not going to use it, it's getting rid of some menu items, deleting or unpublishing newsfeed components, all of that sort of stuff that you just know that the client's not going to end up really wanting, and just gets in your way. So you do it once, and then you just kind of set and forget it. It's just there. So does anyone use anything other than admin tools, Akiba, JCE for their base?
RS firewalls.
Which one? RS firewall.
And all the no number tools.
No numbers. Yep.
Yeah. And I often put in comment forms too, but that's just me.
Yeah. Right. So which no number extensions do you use? All of them.
Turn it on.
Nice. Yeah, right.
Articles anywhere, is there, or modules anywhere? You put a few. There's quite a few.
Yep.
There's a few. Yeah, useful.
What did you
JFP
say?
Connect as well.
Which it?
JFP Connect.
JFP Connect. Oh, the FTP.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's for
right.
connection with Facebook, basically for integration
Ah.
purposes.
Okay, so a social connection tool.
Yeah, it's very
Yep.
good actually.
Yeah, right. Cool. What were you going to
Yeah,
say?
I was going to say, I often customise my JCE, so one of the reasons why I do a skeleton setup is so that I can customise JCE to get it to do what I want, rather than always put paragraphs every time we want a new line, and
Yep.
those sort of things. So you're right. You
I do that though too.
yeah,
So-
and that just makes the time to get out the ground that much quicker.
Yeah.
Is to go through all of those common things, unpublished Bs and atomic and all those kind of
Yeah,
things.
right.
And, yeah.
It might only save you, an hour or a couple of hours, but it
Absolutely.
means a lot in the long run, I think. Yeah.
You know where you're starting from.
Yeah, exactly.
I have an admin profile in JCE which I've customised.
Yeah.
And I'm also sticking all the JCE plugins. 'cause they're
Yes.
really nice
Yep.
as well.
That's right. Yeah.
On my knowledge base, I use JC, and we slim down the profile, so it's just insert image and typography and that sort of stuff. And every time I go there, I go, oh wow, what's this new interface? Because on the main Joomla Bamboo site, it's the whole thing, and I have to constantly kind of organize myself. I'm just lazy. I haven't gone in and set up the profile, but that's those sort of stuff just going to save you time, down the track. I thought I'd show you the. Let's see which one. There we go. So this is the sample data from Joomla 1.0. So these are just all fresh installs. What's that? Yeah. I mean, this is the first template I ever looked at, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on, and I still probably don't if I'm going to be completely honest. Joomla 1.5 got a little bit better. Joomla 1.5 got a little bit better, but there's still a stack of stuff there that you don't really need. Even things like the PDF buttons or the mail buttons, you know, if you don't really need those things, then just kind of get rid of it. And the reason why I'm really pushing this is because often it just gets in the way of the design. Like when you're trying to set the site up and get it the way you want it to look, it just gets in the way. I can't count the number of times I've been trying to work on a heading or something. What's going on? What am I missing? And just realise that the PDF button or the mail button's still published. You know, I've started to put out the demos without that sort of stuff because it just adds to clutter. Most Joomla users know that Joomla has the capacity to do that, so that's good. And if you don't know, I think it's a small loss. Joomla 2.5 actually got a lot better. It's a lot better starting place. There's still stuff on there that I would disable. There aren't too many sites that we build, or that I build in particular, or demo sites that I build, that have got a sidebar menu on the front page. It's just not really a design thing that I look at the moment. So that's just another thing that you have to disable. I did try and install Joomla 3.0 today. I tried it on 2 separate machines, and I fixed the magic quotes issue on both my local servers, but I couldn't get past the installation setup. So, does anyone have a demo for like a blank Joomla 3.0? It's the templates.
Looks almost like that.
Yeah, the template's better though, isn't it?
I can't remember whether it actually got close. I remember running into magic quotes. And then I did a ticket in Rockin and said, can you turn magic quotes off for me, please? And they said, no, not on the crappy shared server you're on.
Yeah, right.
And to which I replied, I think you're going to have a bit of a problem when all of us want to move to it. And then Brad jumped in and said, this is how you do it. Because when I looked it up, it said, can't be done in your php.ini, but cool.
Yeah, right. The way I looked it up today was there's a blog post, a forum post on OS training that goes into detail about how to set up a specific PHP ini file. And so basically this is something that I've started doing the last couple of months. It's actually just starting, this is my base build right here. So I've basically, I've got rid of all the clutter, and I've broken the menu structure down into what I assume is a very sort of simple kind of business sort of purpose driven kind of setup. And in fact, I've seen quite a few sites that have been using this, and they haven't changed the menu structure at all. They've just kind of slotted in their information. You've done that. And I think that just kind of puts all the fun back into developing, because you just kind of, okay, there we are, we've got the site, and I know I might need to add a couple of menu items, but basically this is a great place for me to start. If you don't specialize in businesses, then you can obviously tweak it to suit, you know, whatever the business or whatever the purpose you're using it for. So it's important that, you know, you don't just necessarily take what works for me, but kind of play with it for a little bit and see what works for you. But you can see here how, you know, it's basically a blank canvas. There's nothing that I need to take away. And the template I'm releasing, hopefully at the end of this week, is just basically based on this. I've just gone in and added the colours. It looks quite different, of course, but the setup was really simple, and it was the fastest development I've done in terms of template building, just using this thing, mainly because I know it. So we'll actually get into some nitty gritty now. And who's actually, like, so some of you have edited templates. Some of you have built your own templates, but who's actually looked at the template folder and kind of really not known what's going on? Yeah, you've known what's going on. Yeah, it's kind of daunting, isn't it? I'll bring this up. Once you get used to it, it's really fine. But a common response on our support forum is that if you're a new user and we say, I'll just add this bit of code to the theme.css file, they go, where the hell's that? I've got no idea where that is. Actually, I was going to show you using the inspector. So one of the main, and when I first started out, what I used to do is open up the FTP client and then just randomly edit different files and just hope that I would hit the right one. I'd type hello in, PHP file, or, make the body black and just kind of see if that worked. It was ludicrous the way that worked. Here's a much better way. In Safari and Chrome and also Firefox, when you enable the inspector, damn it. All right, let's just do it here. That's not going to work either, is it? Oh yeah. So basically, the inspector shows you exactly what's loading on the page, all of the assets. You scroll down through there, and if you hover over an element, it'll show you the pathway there, and you can then separate to just show all the style sheets, and then click on the style sheet, so you can actually see the direct path that the style sheet is sitting in, and you can see the content as well. I tend not to use that so much because I use the CSS edit for that. And you can see JavaScript as well. So I use that like pretty much every time I open a site up, the inspector's up, so I can just kind of see what's actually loading. I'm sure some of you experienced jQuery conflicts in templates or sites, and this is the easiest way to see if there are two versions of the library loading, which is the most common issue that you get. So you can just look through here. If you see jQuery.min.js or a derivation of that loading more than once, then you know that that's the cause. You can then basically move through it. I don't have it loading on this page, but basically look at the pathway. A common one that loads it is Modalizer, so a no number extension. And then you can basically target it and say, okay, so I've got JB Library or ZenGrid Framework loading jQuery, but I've also got Modalizer loading jQuery, and that's where the issue's coming from. Of course, the errors will show up in the console. So this is really fundamental when you're developing, so you can see what's actually going into to building the template. I think the more you come to grips with the actual structure of a Joomla site as well as the template itself, the more you just become comfortable with it, and you don't have to think about it too much, and you won't be scratching your head as much. And I think fundamentally that's one of the biggest things that gets in the way of people building sites, is they hit a roadblock and productivity stops and creativity stops, and they basically need to go and find either Google where it's coming from or find someone else to help, and those delays just get in the way of productivity. All right, so this is a template that I've developed in the last day or so, which I'm going to make available for everyone to use if you want to, but it's basically framework agnostic pretty much, and we're going to start developing with it in a little bit, but I'll walk you through the specific files that go into building a Joomla template. The index.php file is the primary file that basically serves up what the template's going to be delivering to the page. That's the one that we use to determine the CSS files, JavaScript files, images, the actual markup itself. I should actually do a little disclaimer that this is not always going to be the case if you're using a template framework. Particularly with my framework, the index file just redirects to the plugin folder, and I think most others kind of work that way as well. So Gantry and T3 as well. Let's go back to here for a second. So we have the index file. Template details file is basically the file that you use to tell Joomla what the hell it is. The details in the template details file turns up in the back end. So you've got the name of the template, the designer, the positions that are involved, as well as any parameters that might show up in the back end. And we have what else did I have there? Index the template thumbnail.png. There are a whole stack of files in a Joomla template that just load automatically because of the framework, because of the Joomla framework. So the thumbnail is just automatically referenced in the Joomla template administrator, the manager, and will show show the image for the template, and that's the template there, the image there. It just needs to be, your standard. It just needs to be named template _ thumbnail.png, and it will show up. Nothing else that's special about that. The favicon, that gets referenced in the index file, and also we have CSS folder and the HTML folder. The HTML folder holds all of the HTML overrides that you use later on if you want to change the layout of any of the fundamental modules or components. The CSS folder is where it's where you keep the CSS files. You don't have to keep it there. It's just convenient and easier to manage if you do pull it all together. For this template, I've also added a few extras. So we have an error file, and this error file is just a basic copy of the core Joomla error file. But it basically, Joomla will look for the error file in the template folder, and if it's not there, it will serve its own one. That's basically the MVC structure right there. And I haven't edited that at all, but you can see how you can just go in and change the error message, put some markup around the list elements and that sort of stuff. Another file is the offline file. So it's the same thing. I'm just basically here referencing the site name and then grabbing the offline message from Joomla. And you can basically edit that, put a big pretty image, or do whatever you like with it, but it will just automatically get referenced by Joomla. Russell?
In the error file, it would be normal to redirect to an article that you've written that provides a custom 404 page.
Yeah, right. That's a good idea. And extensions like SH404 and I'm sure the other SEF apps will do that as well, won't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
So these are acting like overrides, but they're not in the HTML folder?
That's correct. Yeah. So
that one's special. The error PHP is special.
The error's special, the offline special, the component is special as well. So this is the file that gets loaded when you reference it in some components. Just reference it. They just want the body of the Joomla site without any of the template around it. You generally don't really need to do anything with this. There was a bug in 1.5 in the middle of all of those releases where you needed to put this in, but I'm pretty sure that it's not necessary now to use it. It still does the same thing though. So let's, where's that site gone? Just find my bookmarks. Wrong one. All right, so I'm gonna have to log in again here. So if we put the site offline, oh, I'm already in there. Site offline, and then save that. We'll go to the front end, and we'll see that we get the standard Blanco offline page. Now, if we go to the template that we're going to be documenting, developing, we'll just basically get the site name plus the error message that gets set in the configuration. And as a test, we can write our own message here and save that. And so basically, if you've got Joomla is so fantastic that you can run so much stuff through the actual system itself, but often it's easier just to have, like if you're doing the same sort of sites all the time, just have your own offline page with your logo, like have it all set up so it's just inside one file. Makes it sort of more complex, I guess, to edit later on, but it just gives you absolute control. So you can go in and change the markup, or change the selector, or add fancy stuff, or add a timer. This site will be back online in an hour, or do all sorts of fancy stuff just in the file. And it's sort of like going back to basics with web design, because you're actually just kind of getting your hands in and making changes in the files itself. I think for me, certainly what made me curious about building templates was looking at what Joomla could do, and then actually kind of seeing how I could change that and just get in and move the code around, change different things. And this is a really easy example of doing that. You could just put in a reference to your logo, stick it on there, and suddenly you've got your own custom offline page. All right. Let's see. So I've gone through most of that. In this template, I've also included a JS folder, which I've put a template.js file in, and also an includes folder, which I've put a variables.php file in. And I'll just show you a really simple sort of tweak that you can use that for. Again, that's kind of sort of under the hood, more tinkering, but sometimes it's easier just to do that if you see a JavaScript or a jQuery tool that you want to add to your site. It's easier to do that and put it in the JS file rather than needing to actually include it via a plugin or some other mode. This is really just kind of a way for you to just get your hands in and get your hands dirty. Some of you may not want to do that, and that's okay too. Okay. All right, so I've kind of done most of that before. I skipped a page. All right. I think it's sort of worth revisiting CSS edit again, but let's actually do something a little bit more obvious.
You've not switched to Espresso yet?
No, I was saying before that this is the tool that I use because I just use another code editor to do the editing, and I never got how to use it. I get lazy. I don't know if you do that as well. You kind of figure out how to use something and then don't look at anything else for a while. And then I'll go through a phase of looking at everything, and then I end up going back to the same tools again. But this is just really fantastic in terms of developing live. You can say, let's change the background there. Let's change the base color to red. It must be specified somewhere else. In the text, we can change the font size. 90%, that's specified somewhere else as well. That's a good example. Let's see if it will override. There we go. So you can just basically, tweak live to your heart's content and basically just write your own code. Or as I said before, use the actual the editor. Great, thank you. And let's have a look here. Look at the text. I never use this, so let's change it to all small caps. Normal. Make everything bold. Have nothing.
That's writing live to your file?
To your file it is, but it hasn't saved it. You've got to save it. It's basically, there are the pre-saved things. So if you were to look at that page in Safari or something, it's not going to be, it'll be the pre-saved version.
But it will save.
Once you save that file.
So all it's doing is doing an override on what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And then it will commit to the server once you
So it's
save
not
it.
like Firebug. No, but
Yeah,
Firebug things that actually, there are Firebug things that actually write directly to your CSS file. The problem is it's just on one bloody line.
Yeah. In this instance, it's not going to write it because I've just extracted it. You can see here it's the extracted theme. It's not the actual file itself. I didn't open it directly. This is the line of code here that does it.
Remote server.
Yeah.
You go to the file from a remote server, edit there,
Yeah.
and then when you're happy with it, save and push it off to the server again.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's let's go in here. And so basically I've opened up the actual theme.css file. You override it like this, grab that, select the file that you've got open and override it. And now when because those changes with the black were on another file, when I press space it'll go back to the actual file and then I can just go back in here and edit again. Whoop, $3,000. Oh, why hasn't that worked? There we go. So in this case, the font size is actually being controlled by the framework as well. So anyway, it's just, I think that hands-on direct thing just really helps in terms of speed up your development and make you feel more engaged in the process. I hate when customers say, "Oh, you know, we've got the FTP extension installed and no other FTP access," because it means that rather than just a quick load up my FTP server, open the file in CSS Edit, have a quick flick through, I can find a selector within a couple of minutes. Whereas with the other way, I've got to actually remember what the selector is, save the file, then refresh the other page, go back and adjust that way. And I mean, that takes up my time in terms of troubleshooting, but I can't imagine developing a design, you know, any other way than actually just typing to have it done. There's some other apps that you can get that they basically listens out to whether a file's been saved or not, and then refreshes Safari, or refreshes the page. I don't know if the PC type app that does that, but there are certainly a couple of tools in Macs that do that, and I think Sublime might have some extra function that does that. So maybe it will work for PCs as well, actually.
Is there any tool that you can think of that you can use? It's great that you can do on-the-fly CSS edits. What about finding where a particular piece of functionality sits within the site?
So, do you mean what sort of functionality?
So for example, you're wanting to find out which PHP file grabs a particular piece of either text or a photo or something from a database.
Yeah.
So, for example, you're wanting to theme a virtual install, or you're wanting to find out where K2 grabs something from.
Yeah, sure.
Where does that thumbnail come from?
Yeah, somebody else might have a better way of doing that, but what I do is basically disable functionality. So I'll rename folders and basically do a trial and error that way. So the biggest way to figure out if it's coming from the template is to rename firstly the HTML folder, and that removes any influence the template's going to have from a PHP point of view over a component's functionality. And then if that doesn't work, then disable the template completely, and then you can rule that out of the equation. And then you basically, it's trial and error for me. Sometimes, I mean, I've got a pretty good idea now of how to look for something, and particularly if you're using something that's using the MVC structure, you can look through and find the actual view files for the component. Some components don't necessarily have that, so it's a bit trickier. The other option I've got is download the entire site or Joomla itself and search in the Finder for it. You know, or try and load it into my code editor and basically just do a search and find for that.
Is it fair to say that basically if you do offline editing, those sort of searches are going to be much quicker then? So if you're going to edit in WAN format, then you've got the ability to check the files going through more quickly for...
Yeah, SSH is pretty quick for finding files and stuff, but again, it's the command line and you've got to know how to use it. SSH is a dangerous tool for me. I've crashed the server so many times by just typing the wrong key and suddenly it transmits. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, RM, that's the famous one, isn't it?
Another way that I use is to switch off SEF. So if you
Yeah,
switch
right.
off SEF, then you can see the full path. You often see the view file, you know, what view it's actually calling. It's particularly handy when developing with Joomla Social.
Right.
Particularly handy because Joomla Social's view
Yeah.
files are a mile long.
1,000 files in Joomla Social. I showed you how to use.
Files you can use a debugger.
What's that?
All those files and drag out a debugger and follow it through.
And how would you use that? Is that in the IDEs that you showed us?
Yes.
Yeah. You still got to know the actual file though that's doing it, or is there a way of showing which
I
file?
just basically set traps on things and let the debugger find it.
Right.
Most of the conditions.
So traps. What do you mean by traps?
You put in a conditional expression that says I'm looking for this event to occur
Yeah.
at this particular state,
Yeah.
and you let the debugger run until it says, aha, there it is.
Yeah.
It's complicated work.
Yeah, absolutely. I often just write echo hello in the file, and you know if that echoes hello, then you know you've got it. But that's slow going. I think I've done all of that. All right. So sort of moving through into the actual design itself. Question I get occasionally is, why, like everything's based on a grid, why are we using a grid in web design? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Because it's logical.
Who said that? It's logical.
It's reasonably easy to think about.
Yeah, yeah, and it's and I think people think that a grid's necessarily going to block you into a design, but I don't think that's the case at all. It's just a really fundamental way to build structure into your site so that you know that how it's going to behave. There are lots of different types of grids, and I've referenced this Smashing Magazine article, which is not going to click like that, and I'm not connected to the internet, so that's not going to help us, is it? Is there Wi-Fi available? Or?
Coming out of the same thing that goes into the screen.
Into the phone?
Where your screen is.
Yeah.
Where it plugs into the screen. Follow that, there's a network cable.
Oh yeah. You don't have to do the login and stuff?
No. I'll have to download some.
Let's see if it works. No. Anyway, if you Google Smashing Magazine and grids, that article will pop up and it gives you a good sort of grounding in... oh, here we go. I mean, I can't get enough of Smashing Magazine. They've really kind of... I think early on they were just doing a lot of, top 10 sort of posts, but the last couple of years, I mean, this is in 2007, they've really gone into the philosophy behind design and web development, and it's lots of good stuff. So you can see here how they're analysing the use of the grid. Going from simple grids to more complex grids, minimal grid, and there's a whole stack of quotes and references down the bottom here, talking about that. One thing that the eye really engages with, or the human mind engages with, is symmetry. I'm sure you've heard about, that most classically beautiful people have a very symmetrical face. A lot can be said about that for for web design as well. And I think that getting that alignment and space and symmetry onto a page, it doesn't mean it has to be equal, but there has to be a nice balance there. And I think grids really help you to get around that and create that with ease. So you can see there's a lot of love for grids.
Anthony, whilst I love a grid,
Yeah.
I'm actually, I like your row system as well as a grid.
The which one?
Your row system.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I think some of the grids that I used, probably yours, frameworks, where the grid was more structured, I found that a little more distributed rather than the rows.
Okay.
If you think about website master time, it is broken up into rows.
Yep.
which is probably why you do that one.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, my grid's not perfect by any means. So there's one thing I really like about the gantry framework is that you're able to kind of fill empty spaces in a row as well, and that's something that I haven't kind of really looked into. But yeah, I get what you mean for sure. So the next question about which type of grid to choose, and there are lots and lots of grids to choose, 45 plus, and this page is actually great because it will actually generate your own grid system for you. And the question that I put there was whether it's pixel based or percentage based. The 960 grid was was one of the first grids that came out. It's based on a 960 wide pixel wide template design. They break each column, so 12 columns into not 40, what is it, 80? And basically you can go in and specify the width of a particular element in the page using the classes in that, but it's fixed, so it's basically pixel based. As soon as you try and move out of that 960 pixels wide, you start to run into some troubles without then changing the grid spec. If you look down here, I'm hoping it's here. The next step up, in my opinion, is the percentage grid, and the one that I learnt the most from was actually the 1140 grid, which isn't there. It is. Is that going to show it up? And it's percentage based. .net. It changes the playing field a little bit. It sets a maximum width at 1140 pixels, which and this philosophy is a little bit old. Actually, it's a couple of years old because screen sizes have changed so much in the last couple of years, as you all know. But what I really love about this is basically the percentage. Here we go. They're going through the description. These columns here are basically set via percentages, so you can change the outside container width and the inside containers are still respected. So the actual width of each element is still proportionate. And that's what I use fundamentally on these templates. So I've got a percentage grid underneath the framework, and basically we can see that's at about 960 pixels. And as soon as I start to change the width of the browser, it just snaps into place, and the actual the balance and the proportion on the page stays the same because everything's still relative to each other. And I think percentages, I mean, it's pretty old school now actually, but it's still fundamental to doing responsive design at least. You don't have to do it by any means. It's just basically the way I like to work and the way that my customers kind of want it to work, I guess.
Do you know what gantry you're using for the responsive? They've just brought out a couple of responsive design templates. Do you know what grid they use?
Yeah, I haven't looked at that actually. I assume it's percentage based as well. You can't. I don't think you can really do. I mean, I suppose you can do responsive design with pixels, but you've got to have the pixels specified at each breakpoint. If you have a look at. Let's go in here. Where are we? That's not the one I want. Let's use the inspector. So look at all this, we come in here and find the grid. So this is the grid that we use in the framework. So each column is just basically set by a percentage there. If we're going to load up a column that has and the grid's divided into 12. So grid 4 is basically that's going to span a third of the page, and The 30% doesn't change whether we're on a 960 pixel wide screen, 1200, it's always 30%. So you just basically set and forget it, unless you're designing for mobile pages or mobile screens. And then as I'll show you a bit later, you've then got to specify, basically reset the grid. So we've gone in here, and when the page gets to 520 pixels, we then reset it to be 100% across. So, and we'll talk about that when we get into the actual template itself.
Anthony, that's the best file in the whole place, that one.
Yeah.
That other thing he just showed, I hope we can get a chance to ask a question later, but your percentage right margin,
Yep.
to try and get things butted up together, has got me stumped.
Yeah, and I think I've just learnt, I'm constantly learning stuff, but box sizing, have you looked at that? So I'll deal with that a bit later.
Sure.
Yeah. But you basically mean having elements that are sitting next to each other and fill 100% of the page.
Well, and butt up against each other.
Yeah.
And then, but still fail gracefully underneath.
Right. Well, when we get up to it, let me know. And somebody mentioned Joomla 3.0 and Twitter Bootstrap. So Bootstrap's this CSS and JavaScript framework that's been built by Twitter in the last, I guess it's what, 2 years old now, or 1.5 years. It's basically the buzzword, and Kyle Ledbetter, who's doing all the leading the team, who's doing all the J3.0 user interface stuff, is just kind of in love with it. And it's a really good system, and I think the results are really standard and standardized, such that in Joomla 3.0, when you're really starting to build sites, you won't have that occasion, unless the developer's not using Bootstrap, where you've got your template right, you've got your content right, and suddenly you load in, RS Forms or Virtumart or whatever, and suddenly it just kind of looks dog ugly. The Bootstrap is going to basically mean that all of the elements, whether you're on a shop page or a content page, K2 page, all of the elements are going to look the same. So an input button is always going to look like the same as it does across all the views. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the biggest bonuses for 3.0, is if all of the developers basically follow that lead, and it's certainly something that I'm planning on doing. Oh, did you have a question?
No.
Oh.
Except those that still use tables.
Oh, right, okay. No, you can still override tables. I didn't want to. I keep doing that. Basically, that important statement, it's a hack, but you can, if you've got a fixed width on the page, you can write. I'll show you in a bit. You can just write exclamation mark important after the rule, and that will take precedent over what's on the page in the CSS file. It's a hack, but it's one of the. Sometimes you have to hack the CSS in order to kind of work properly with Joomla, because there are files coming from everywhere. All right. How are we going for time? All right. So now we'll get into some actually building. So this was the part that I was scratching my head about yesterday, trying to actually do this in a way that's going to be helpful. Let's get rid of that. Where's the other one? Here we go. Okay, so I'll put the site online. Yeah, another thing is setting the session time so you don't time out all the time. I always forget to do that. You do that
There's
here.
a little plugin that kills the session time. So,
Oh, really?
but it's kind of like on your local server for development only, sort of danger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
So it's
You can,
you've got to be aware that you put it in.
yeah, if you,
out before you go up on the big server.
There's a plugin just for admins as well, so admins make it look
Okay.
that's pretty smart. All right. Does anyone have any questions about what I've spoken about thus far?